Welcome. Good to go? Well, good afternoon and welcome everyone. I am Cherylyn Harley LeBon and I am a visiting fellow with the Dole Institute this fall, and I'm leading a discussion series on the elusive quest for the lacrosse mom and how corporations, communities, and political candidates can engage women. And the reason why I use lacrosse mom, normally the term is soccer mom, but since I'm a lacrosse mom, I thought that was more appropriate. So this week, Katie Pinke is our guest, and I'm so delighted that she could make it. She hails from North Dakota, and Katie has just an amazing and fabulous background. So I'm glad that you're all here, and we're going to have a great discussion. I met Katie at Blog Her, which is one of the largest community of bloggers, women bloggers in the country. And we met several years ago. We were sitting at the same table at lunch, and we've remained in touch via social media. So I kind of feel like I really do. This is our second time meeting, but I really feel like I know Katie because I follow her on Instagram, and I know what she's up to professionally and personally. So it's great to have her here with me. So Katie's a fifth-generation farm girl and lifelong North Dakotan. She takes every opportunity to talk about family, food, rural life, motherhood, and community, online and offline. Last summer, she was named the publisher and general manager of Agweek and works from her home. She works with the Agweek team to create a weekly publication and a television show, and she remains a keynote speaker throughout North America. She lives in Wishek, North Dakota, with her husband Nathan and 3 children, and together they're small business owners with Nathan's parents. Katie's family farms a couple hours from Wishek, and they grow winter wheat, canola, pinto, black beans, soybeans, and corn. Last year, to add to Katie's busy life, she was elected to serve on the Wishek City Council, and she serves on the Streets and Sewer Committee as well as the Job Development Committee. Katie is a perfect example of a woman engaging at the corporate, political, and community level. She also volunteers with Meals on Wheels, which she brings along her daughters. And she's a 4-H leader. She coaches the track team, and she also created Wishek Friendly Faces, a community program that we're going to talk about in a little bit. Whew.
I'm tired.
I know. One busy lady. So tell us about Agweek. We're here in Kansas, and I know that some of our guests would like to know a little bit about Agweek, the circulation, the readers.
Yeah, I brought one along. This is Agweek this week. So we have a weekly magazine, and Agweek has about 30,000 subscribers. About 92,000 people touch it on a weekly basis. Our online presence is growing very quickly right now, but the average farmer is a 60-year-old male, and they still like to touch print. So it depends on the week, but we're anywhere from 30 to 40 pages a week, and that goes out across a 4-state area. Great. Then there's also our website presence, which is growing dramatically right now. So the web presence, we also have an app, and then we have Agweek TV, which is relatively new, 3 years.
Great.
So Agweek is a regional presence, been around since 1985, and is owned by Forum Communications Company out of Fargo, which is a family-owned regional media company. We are the only agriculture brand within that media company that touches 7 states, but primarily dailies as well as broadcast.
Great. And tell us about the weekly television show. Can they catch it here in
Lawrence?
Lawrence?
You'd have to go on to agweek.com/agweektv. Okay. I hope that we grow it so you can all see it in Lawrence with affiliates. Right now we're in North Dakota and South Dakota, and then we touch other states in the upper Midwest. So Montana and some a little bit into Wyoming and touching Nebraska and Iowa. So we're getting closer to Lawrence, Kansas.
Good, good. So what's the most interesting story that maybe Agweek covered that you think some of our guests would like to know about?
Yeah, I think probably over the last year that I've been a part of Ag Week, we've worked really hard to vary our content. And that's really important for all of you not connected to agriculture. We want to make sure that we're connecting relevant agriculture news to outside media that they can carry it and cover it as well. So obviously, Dakota Access Pipeline was in a lot of headlines in North Dakota, in case you missed it. But I lived on the other side of the river, so that was across the river from me, but I live in south central North Dakota. And my great-grandfather was the first white man to own land on Standing Rock Indian Reservation. And my dad is a graduate of Fort Yates High School. And so that story on a personal level was really important to me. I still have family at Fort Yates and on Standing Rock. And so that was a really important story for Ag Week to cover from the agriculture perspective.
Right, exactly.
And the impact that ranchers were having, both Native American ranchers and non-Native ranchers, on and off, that area, off the reservation area. So we covered that, our reporter Mikkel Pates. We brought stories that I don't think otherwise would have been told.
Right.
And so it was a very important story. Another really important story this year that we've covered that probably wouldn't otherwise be covered is a very large farmer in our region has filed bankruptcy. And that's important because the agriculture economy is down, and we've noticed that nobody likes it on Facebook, but thousands of people read the stories.
Really?
They must think it's like a bad omen to like the story about the farmer going bankrupt, but it's really resonated with people. Then, of course, new technologies and new ways of farming are popular.
Right. And tell us something about farmers that, the average individual might not know.
Wow, I could talk about farmers with you all day long, because farmers are a passion of mine, and telling their stories are a passion. But farmers, I think there's a lot of headlines, and probably people don't really get to know farmers anymore. So there are a lot of different types of farmers, and I think people get confused by labels on farmers. But I've always said this, I've never met a factory farmer. I don't think there is a factory farm. There's different types of farming now.
Right.
I am accepting and open to all types of farming because we have a lot of hungry people.
Right.
And that population is growing. So we need different ways to raise food, and for different people, for different price points. So farmers are using new technology. They are actually increasing sustainability on their farms and ranches, using less water, less passes on the field, less diesel fuel. It's important that those stories are told, how we are increasing efficiencies that are creating more productive agriculture, but also a sustainable agriculture for a next generation to get involved.
Right. You bring up a very good point about the technology, because we know that people are pretty passionate about food.
Yes.
And we've got all sorts of different trends in food and farming. We know we're part of some of the same Facebook groups, but there's this trend in organic farming.
Right.
And lots of discussions about, the benefits of organic farming versus conventional farming. You've got people like the Food Babe, who talks about what type of foods are bad.
Right.
But Katie, it's not necessarily science-based.
Right.
So talk to us about, what is this all about? And people are so passionate about their food and being right, that their food, this one type of food is better than the others. I'd love to get your thoughts about the organic versus the conventional farming and basically the food wars.
Right. I celebrate food choices, and I think we all should, because we are such an affluent food-eating population that mere fact that we're arguing about our food choices shows that we're affluent eaters.
First world problems.
Exactly, first world problems. And so I support organic agriculture, I support conventional agriculture, and I think it's a beautiful thing that we have choices.
Right.
And I want to support those different types of choices, and those have different types of people that buy the products. I, at one point in my life, was a single mother and a college student, and never ever did I think about paying more for one product over another.
Right.
I went with the cheapest food. And that's the bottom line, is that a lot of Americans like cheap food. we are accustomed to cheap
Right.
food. America spends as little as any other country of our disposable income on food. It varies, but it's somewhere from 9 to 10%-ish each year on our food.
And I think we also like a variety. Not
Right.
only do we want inexpensive food, we like lots of a variety and choices, right?
But I live in North Dakota, and let me tell you, in January, I need food from other places. And to me, it doesn't matter what label was on it. I'm hungry in January. I always say, I'm so thankful I don't have to farm the way that my great-great-grandmother
Right.
did 5 generations before me. So, yeah, so it takes all types of farmers. And I think there's confusion and a lot of noise.
Yes.
And it's hard for agriculture. Production agriculture is less than 2% of the population. And so within agriculture, I don't think that we should be arguing about what type of agriculture,
Right.
because we have a growing global population and we have hungry people.
Right. Around the world.
Around the world. So to me, American agriculture is not just feeding us,
Right.
our people, but there's a much greater. The other aspect that I think is not addressed enough is food waste.
Yes.
And 40% about in America, we have a food waste problem. We throw away our food. And so we could address more
Right.
food insecurity issues by addressing the food waste issue.
Good. You bring up another point. We've got hurricanes going around.
Yeah.
I mean, now we've got Maria. So my question is, as we know that farmers in Florida and Texas have lost their crops, is it fair to say that farmers in other parts, say for example in North Dakota, will there be additional pressure for them to fill the gap, or can they even fill the gap? Because it's different crops in Florida and Texas.
Yeah, we can. I mean, it's just different. And I think that's one thing that I've had people ask me in North and South Dakota, like, well, why can't we grow more carrots? Why can't we grow more lettuce? And if there was a profitable way, and a few people do make it work, but we have to support all types of farmers in the different regions and the crops that they can grow. That is something technology has done.
Right.
It has brought different crops to different regions and different soil types and drought areas, and so there certainly is, but yeah, we have to rely on global agriculture to address some of those issues, and we'll see it at the grocery store level.
Right,
we'll
I
see
was
a
going to
price
say,
increase.
I mean, we're going to see an increase in prices obviously in citrus crops.
Yeah.
Florida, I mean, is abundant in oranges and...
Yeah, I think one area of American agriculture that I've worked in my past that isn't often addressed is California agriculture. So people think of Florida oranges or Texas oranges, that we call it the smile in agriculture. So you can look at the lower U.S. and you can come across, and there's produce raised in Arizona as well. So California agriculture can fill some of that. California agriculture is a tremendous economy in itself.
Exactly.
Right, and so raises about 400 crops in itself. So they are diverse and they can fill some of that. But it's a global area that will have to fill it.
Right. So let's talk about city council. So your town is 1,000 people.
Yeah, they might be watching, actually.
Yes, they might be watching. So why did you run?
I ran because there was a need. And I live in a town of 1,000 people. And when I moved there 10 years ago, it was one of the most elderly county per capita in the nation. That doesn't mean a lot of people live there, but per capita, we were very elderly. And I moved there pregnant, which I got a lot of quilts in the mail. They were very excited that a pregnant woman moved to McIntosh County. But there's a need. And I think that sometimes we have to be empowered to step out and to run. Sometimes you have to tap somebody else on the shoulder and encourage them to run.
Right.
And I want to serve at a local level first.
Good.
I think it's really important to support and to serve in your local government. And that includes, I first served on the Job Development Authority. I'm not on that anymore, I think it was in my bio, but I served on that first for 5 years, so I got a taste of that and the importance of rural economic development.
Right.
And then there were several spots open and it needed to be filled, and so I used leftover cookies from my son's graduation party, and I put them in a red wagon, and I went door to door with a friend who was also running, and we knocked on doors of people that we didn't know and gave them a cookie that my mom had made, and told him we were running for city council. And again, there needs to be a next generation on councils, you know, in district level, legislative, on county commissions. There is a real need, and I believe it starts at a local level.
Good. What surprised you about running?
How many people I would hear from? You don't know how passionate people are about small things in small towns. And so you hear, I think in a larger city council, so the North Dakota League of Cities has done a wonderful job at training any elected official at that level. And so we all go to the same training, whether we're in a large city or a town of 1,000 people. So I hear the issues that those people are faced with. But in a small town, people have access to you all the time. So they see you in church, they see you at a sporting event, they see you in the grocery store, they see you everywhere. And they have no problem telling you anything that they feel. So you're kind of always on call to your constituents. And so I didn't realize, for instance, how passionate people are about their water bill.
Right.
And so things like that are really important to listen and to understand the perspective of the constituents.
So do you think it's harder for women to run for local office and then even higher office?
I personally have seen a lot of women do it, but I can look at the numbers and see that it is not there. So I can look at, even in my own state, North Dakota legislature-ish, you know, numbers. It's just a much smaller minority percentage of women running. I feel women put that on ourselves sometimes, but it's also how it's been handled in the past. So I feel that spending that time away from my children or going, for instance, to the state legislature, which is 100 miles away. Our legislature is great in North Dakota. It only meets every other year, but it meets for 80 days. And so I think that there's a pressure on women, you know, to be away from our families for that long. So I do sense that women wait a little bit longer. But I also think that they're maybe not active at a local level or don't feel encouraged to run in my area specifically. It's changing, but it needs to continue to change.
So you think some of the obstacles might be the support?
Yeah.
How about money? I mean, I don't know how much it costs to run for Wishek City Council.
Cookies in a wagon.
Cookies.
No, but I mean, I think that there's just a matter of feeling empowered. In a rural area, it's easy to do things the way it's always been done. And it's also, I often say, there's a standard of good enough. And so if everybody else is doing a good enough job, why change from that standard? There's a sense of keeping the peace. We're all in the same circle. So we do sit in church next to each other, and then we teach Sunday school together, and then we see each other at the grocery store, and we work together, and they're also my husband's customers. And so there's a sense of not upsetting people as well, trying to keep the outside peace, even if they're completely talking about you behind their back, your back. But there's I think we have work to do.
So tell us about some of the work on the city council. You said you're on the streets and sewer committee. People do care about their water bill, and they care about the sewer system. Those
probably the biggest accomplishment we've had in our last year, which this sounds like maybe it wouldn't be a big deal, but we redid all of our ordinances. And ordinances in a city of any size are a very big deal. And so that was a big undertaking. And we had to completely go ordinance by ordinance. A lot of our ordinances were from the 1950s. Our copy of ordinances were typed into a black bound binder.
Nothing was available online.
Nothing.
Okay.
And so now we're doing that all, and it's been good to look at every single ordinance. And you know, we had to change some old horse and buggy type ordinances that were still in there. And so making sure that your community is prepared for growth is important economically, and then also making sure that our citizens feel engaged in the process and know what the ordinances are. Because if you're going to, for instance, add a garage, or, you know, we need to make sure they understand the building code and the planning process.
So what's that look like? So what sort of public education efforts to keep people, I mean, you know, you've taken on this big undertaking of updating the ordinances. So for example, the elderly members of your community, How do they learn about the updated ordinances and what they need to do to keep up to code? So to
I
speak?
love that we still have a local newspaper.
Great.
So at every city council meeting, we have a reporter, and all of those ordinances have been published.
Good.
We also have a Facebook page that our city auditor and others serving on the council can post to. But so we want to reach other demographics in different mediums and medias. But that's important, and then we'll have a website, and they're, I think, soon going to go on the website. But again,
It's key to a small town. I
Right.
mean, ordinances are key.
and there's little things that come up when you're serving locally, like we had a few homeowners come, and we didn't know this for those of us that were new to the council, but there's an area of our small town that was built, and these homes have their own septic and water wells. They're not on city sewer and water, and that's my portfolio. So I've learned a lot, more than I ever thought. My college roommate is a water engineer. Like, I thought I learned a little bit when she was in college about sewer, because that's what she told me she was studying. And so I've learned a lot about engineers and city sewer and water, and all things that I never thought I would learn about in public service, but I am thankful.
Right, and they ask you about them, again, at the grocery store, at church.
Yeah.
Because they're concerned about it.
Yeah,
right?
so you're kind of always on, and you're always serving.
So you mentioned your work in jobs,
Yeah.
you're on the job committee, and you also mentioned a little bit about Standing Rock, and it's been reported for several years that unemployment is lower in North Dakota.
It is.
So tell us a little bit about the job situation.
Right.
In your community, is unemployment still low? What does that look like?
We're a
right
little
now?
insulated. We're in south central North Dakota, 100 miles southeast of Bismarck, and we're far from the energy boom of where it happened and where it will continue to be. But absolutely, it impacted all of North Dakota.
Right.
So we support agriculture and energy. However, it increased wages and increased cost of living and homes. My husband is a home builder. We have a home building business. We have a lumberyard building supply business as well. So in order for us to retain our employees, because you can work 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off in the oil industry. So even if it's 3 to 5 hours away, there were people in our area that were going to make 6 figures driving a water truck in the oil fields or going to work on a rig 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. So we as a small business offer full benefits, full family health benefits from dental, vision, all medical for our employees, and that was a retention factor
to retain
for us.
Right.
And so it's definitely, we have much higher expenses as a small business owner, and this is a business that my in-laws started in the 1970s, and so our business today looks different because of the energy boom, but we're very supportive of it. As home builders, it's definitely impacted our business.
So you also have a very powerful and interesting personal story.
Yeah.
If you wouldn't mind sharing, you were a single mom at 18.
Yes.
And you were on a full athletic scholarship to University of Georgia.
Yeah.
In track and field, right?
Yes, I had a scholarship to Georgia, and I had a baby 3 weeks before, so that's complicated with capital C. So I had a baby on the 20th of August of 1997, and I started at the University of Georgia on the 15th of September, which we could spend all evening talking about that. But I always say everybody has a story, and so mine is, a lot of people have similar stories, but I did go to Georgia for a bit, and I wanted to raise Hunter, my son, in North Dakota, near my family. I transferred back to the University of North Dakota. I finished there, I had lots of opportunities, but yeah, he is a 20-year-old now tight end on the University of North Dakota football team, and he's a sophomore majoring in engineering, and he has a full ride. He has an athletic and academic scholarship, and my husband, Nathan, we were married when in the fall of Hunter's 3rd grade year. My husband's adopted him, and so we have a blended family, but a really unique story for our area, just because we are a very rural area and most families look the same. So I would say Hunter, we moved to Nathan's hometown, Wishick, when Hunter was a 4th grader. And Hunter decided that he was a Pinke now, and he didn't want my maiden name as his last name anymore. And he just started calling my husband Nathan Dad on his own.
Right.
And so I think that everybody has different family stories and situations, and we've done the best we can. It doesn't mean it's not messy. It's messy. Families are messy.
Yes.
Everybody has a messy story in their family.
Right.
But no, we've done the best we can, and we're very proud of him. He dealt with a lot of difficulties of just changing of schedules and back and forth. And as a child, and children are very resilient and they bounce back, and he really has thrived. And I loved raising him in a small town. He graduated in 2016 with a class of 18. And there are very few states I can speak in that can relate to that, but I know there are some folks in Kansas that can relate to classes of 18.
Right.
So, and my daughters have small classes as well. So, but I'm proud of the opportunity he had. He still had great test scores, and he was very prepared for college, for pre-engineering, even from a small high school. And he took calculus in high school, and he still had a good class offering, despite the rural location we raised him in.
And what advice would you give to young women who might find themselves in the same situation?
Well, my mother always told me to do the next thing. And that sounds really simple, but when you are a single mom at 18 and you want to get a college degree and you feel like more of a statistic than empowered to go to college, it seems it's easier to quit than keep going.
Right.
And so that is what I did. I did the next thing. So sometimes I made the wrong turn. And the other advice that I share is the road goes both ways. You can turn around and go back and find a different path. And I've had to do that at times. I've had to find different paths. And so I've worked different jobs and made mistakes. And I am thankful that Hunter was raised alongside of me. It was very emotional when he went to college because I realized I'd spent my entire adult life raising him, meaning I really became an adult being his mother, and so suddenly he was adult. So, but yeah, I would say any young woman is, do the next thing. I would say the same thing to a young man: do the next thing, and still set your goals high. I mean, all of us have things that happen that can throw us off, those curveballs that can take us down, and there's something about dusting yourself off and getting back up again and keep going.
Yeah, and they shape your life and your worldview.
Yeah, and I do share about being a single mom, not because, I know a lot of other single moms, but I do share about that because it's easy to look at me as a career woman married with 3 kids. People, if they know me today, they might not know the path that I traveled. And we all have a path that we travel, but I do share specifically about that to reach, hopefully, one other woman that can be empowered to keep going.
Right. So our third pillar is community engagement. Again, when I think of Katie, I go, whew, because she is just unbelievably engaged at all these levels. But
some people might wish I wasn't, actually, let's be honest. Oh, Katie Pinke again.
But you are, you've done amazing things with 4-H, you coach, and you've created this, it's the Wishick Friendly Faces.
Yeah, that's a community group. Other people are a part of it as well, but that was, I think, important to look at your community and where the needs are. So it was actually 4 years ago today, I saw in my Facebook memories this morning, very important documentation, Facebook memories. So I spoke at a conference led by North Dakota Farmers Union, and I was there talking about rural public preschool.
Right.
And 2 women spoke from Williston, North Dakota, which is in the heart of where the oil development was.
So near Standing.
A different area, actually, northwest North Dakota.
Okay.
And they were natives to Williston. That was their hometown, and Williston was rapidly changing because of the oil boom. And they created...
And when you say rapidly changing, Katie, what do you mean?
I mean, like...
Good, bad, what do we...
Well,
what
it depends
changes?
on what your perspective of oil development is in North Dakota, but I personally support domestic energy growth of all kinds. I support domestic energy growth. It creates jobs, and overall, there is, of course, ugly with it. So there is ugly in those communities. So they were seeing their community change from the demographics of people, new families moving in. There were man camps. There were families living in campers and trailers, and just a huge growth in their schools. And so they created Williston Friendly Faces. And two young women from my community were also at the same conference. So we drove together, and on the way home, we contacted the Williston Friendly Faces, and we said, can we just copy your idea? And that's how great ideas come, right?
Right.
By looking at someone as an example. So we created Wishick Friendly Faces, and really what it is we've wrapped presents at our business, Pinke Lumber and Pinke Homes. We've wrapped presents, and oftentimes not many people come to have their presents wrapped, and then they give us a donation. So we start to worry, like, what if we're not going to have any money this year? So we start wrapping presents, and then we take anonymous ideas from people and nominate people that may have fallen on hard times or just have like a gap this holiday season of they need something, or they won't have anyone visit them, the elderly. Maybe a family that has had some type of a tragedy, or I remember getting a nomination that they didn't specifically need stuff, they needed happiness. And there are things like that. So you get these nominations, and we keep it all confidential, so just our small core group knows about it. But what's happened over the few years now that we've done it is that people just walk in and give us donations, cash donations. And it's a really the most rewarding thing I've ever done at the holidays. My kids, I just buy a lot less for my kids because I realize how little my kids really need and how I'm so much more willing to give to the needs in my community that I wouldn't otherwise know about. And like that's why this year I signed up my daughter and I to do Meals on Wheels, and because I've seen need that I would not have known about otherwise. And so other people have gotten involved, but Wishick Friendly Faces is just a quiet little effort that's not online, or it's just, and every community needs that. There aren't enough programs or anything that can address just kindness and just being a friendly face and being welcoming in your neighborhood.
And do you find that in terms of your volunteers, are they moms, are they dads, are they grandparents? I mean, is this the type of effort that you wish you had more people engaged, or tell us about that?
Yeah, I wish that there was more in a way that we could do more throughout the year. Like we've tried a backpack program, we've bought back to school. Yeah, and it just all takes time. So you have to focus your efforts on what do we do best. So last year I was going to be gone over Christmas with my family, and there were other volunteers that stepped up. And we deliver actually right as close to Christmas Eve as we can. And I have never cried on Christmas Eve as hard as I cried our first year when we delivered, and I'll just never forget some of those feelings and the joy. And so I think by giving back, I receive more. And honestly, it wants me to do more and to give more. So that's part of, but it's I think it then just kind of starts, and it's no longer about, you know, the three people that started it. It becomes a much broader effort.
And you mentioned Meals on Wheels, which I think is still for senior citizens. And you mentioned that when you moved to Wishick 10 years ago, it was high population of elderly people. So tell us about that.
I didn't know a lot about Meals on Wheels, to be honest, and I'm sure every community around here has it. I didn't know about it. There's always a sign-up sheet in my church. And so this summer, I just decided, like I looked at it and I see that you can sign up to deliver Meals on Wheels. And I like to try to get my daughters engaged in something that they're interested in. So they're 8 and 9 years old. And my daughter, Elizabeth, is the kindest soul I know. Today on the airplane, when I opened up my laptop, there is a note from her that says, "I love you to the moon and back and so much more." And her initials. I mean, my husband is not leaving me love notes on my laptop. So she's a very thoughtful person. So I did it with her and initially, and she would like to do it year round if she could. I mean, we haven't signed up again. I said in December I thought we would again. But all we do is pick up the meals at the Senior Citizen Center and put them in the back of our vehicle and deliver them and to the different addresses that they list out. But again, you wouldn't maybe otherwise have any interaction with these people. And when a 9-year-old delivers their meal, they're way more excited than me.
So that's, there was a recent article about this intergenerational, at senior citizen centers. There are not enough toddlers and young people.
Right.
And so they're trying to do more of that. Is that what we're seeing with your daughter, with delivering the Meals on Wheels, because they see this 9-year-old coming into their home to deliver meals?
I hope that we're just starting that. Like I said, we just started, but it opened my eyes to, we should do more of this.
Right.
And she's in her little elementary basketball season right now, and she knows that on Thursday nights, they also have a Thursday night time where she could do it during the school year, and she's already like charted out when basketball season ends that she could do Thursday night deliveries. And so I think that we need more of that. And in a rural community, I feel like we're closer to it, like it's easier for us to see it.
Yes.
In a larger community, there are so many different circles that you have that you might not see it as much, but I definitely think that there's a great need for that, different generations interacting. I see it in 4-H as well. 4-H is a great youth program.
That was my next question. So you're in rural North Dakota. 4-H must be pretty key for your community.
I wasn't raised with 4-H, so people think rural North Dakota girl, you must have been in 4-H and FFA. No, I wasn't. I was the girl that wanted to run from agriculture. My parents have said many jokes through the years that I ended up working in agriculture my entire career, but I wasn't interested in agriculture growing up, and I didn't want to be in 4-H, and my mom jokes that 4-H skipped a generation because my daughters just love 4-H, and 4-H is a phenomenal program, as FFA. Our son had just wonderful experience in the FFA program, and we hope our daughters do as well, but 4-H is something that any type of kid can be involved.
Right.
And 4-H has grown so much. There are so many opportunities for any type of kid, for any type. I mean, there's a lot of urban growth in 4-H. And so I think that that's another area that you can bring in volunteers of different generations and have different type of lessons and projects. Much more community engagement.
Right. I know we're getting cues to start Q&A, so thank you. And let's open it up. See if you have questions for Katie. Go
ahead.
I hate to show my ignorance, but I have I know North Dakota very well. I worked 25 years up there. I never lived there. Where in the world are you from? When the kids in high school say, I'm going to the big city, where do they go? I have no idea.
That is a good question. So I'll tell you, I was raised in Grand Forks on the eastern side. Okay, and our farm is 60 miles southwest at Annetta, North Dakota. So on the corners of 4 counties, Nelson, Gregg, Steele, that kind of east central area, that's where my family is rooted. My husband's hometown, where has been my home for the last 10 years, is in south central North Dakota. And I say this not as a joke for those Wishick people watching, but it's kind of a forgotten area because we're south of 94, which runs across North Dakota, and then we're east of Highway 83. And so we are 100 miles southeast of Bismarck, 85 miles southwest of Jamestown. I was a college discus thrower, so I like to say I could throw a discus to South Dakota, but I really can't throw that far. But so just north of the kind of north central South Dakota border.
You're in Lawrence Welk.
I am Lawrence Welk. You are of the Lawrence Welk era. Yes, I'm in the next county over. And everybody has the Lawrence Welk accent where I'm from. Hopefully not as much me, but a little. So we have a 3-county area, for those of you that don't know, he knows. And it was settled by German Russians just over 100 years ago. The German-Russian culture is very strong. It remains, and I'll tell just a quick story. Last week at the grocery store, my husband and I had to drive to our son's football game in Vermilion, South Dakota. We stopped at our one and only grocery store to grab some snacks for the 375-mile trip south. And there were 2 people speaking in German, the grocery store clerk and a customer speaking in German. And my 41-year-old husband said in German, which I didn't understand, is, "You better be careful, I can understand." And that is very rare. Every other state in the nation, the number 2 language in that state is Spanish. The number 2 language in North Dakota spoken is German. So it's still a German heritage area and unique. We eat a lot of sausage and sauerkraut. There you go.
Wonderful. Thank you. Any other questions? I know this.
ask another while I'm waiting. I never knew about it until I worked up there in the winter mainly. What's the most important thing that you carry in your trunk in North Dakota that you have to have, because if you don't, and you don't plug your car into that at night, you never get it started.
Yeah. So North Dakota, yeah. Are you talking about an extension cord?
Cord.
Yes.
That's very important.
Yes. Yeah. So block heaters in cars. Yes.
Tell us more about this extension cord.
North Dakota is very cold. And although the climate has changed since the 1980s because we don't have as much snow as we used to when I was a kid, but we still have wicked cold. And it's, I have always said it keeps the riffraff out, but it is true. You have to be quite hardy through North Dakota winters. And you plug in, you have a block heater and you plug in your car to make sure it starts the next day if you park it outside.
Okay.
But I've always carried a winter survival kit in my vehicle. I travel across hundreds of miles by myself often, so I always do have lots of winter survival snacks and snow pants and
Extension
candles.
cords.
Extension cord. Yes, good.
So this is more like just to get elected. So I know you said like that your population's like very elderly. For someone of the younger generation who would be interested in running, it seems like pretty easy for us to be to appeal to our own generation. But what different tactics did you have to use to appeal to the generation above you to get elected?
Well, I couldn't just talk about it on Facebook, I'll tell you that. So I think that's really important, is that we do have younger people getting involved in our region and in our state. And so you have to meet the people of where they are and where they want to be communicated with. So I think there's still a place for traditional media. I think there's still a place for a conversation. And there just as much online presence is important. Obviously, every campaign still, no matter what level it's at, still has a digital strategy, but you have to have an offline strategy as well. And that personal connection and making sure that people know who you are and what you stand for. I had so many people, when I would go door to door, ask me what was my agenda. Why, they assumed I had some riff with the city council and I was running because I was mad about something. So I was getting on the city council to specifically fix something. And that wasn't why I was running. And so I was like, well, is there something you want, to be on my agenda? And so I think that's important, that you really show your intentions and why you're running and who you are. You're willing to listen, that you're there to serve the people. And I always keep that in mind, that we're there to serve all of the taxpayers and that we have to be willing to listen to all of them.
Good. Thank you for that. Yeah. I know there must be more questions. You're just being shy.
So you talked about involvement at the local level. Did you do any of that while you were in college? And additionally, do you have any recommendations for people that are in college for getting involved at the local level?
So I was a single mom in college, so I do feel like I took a different path in that situation. But I do remember my dad was involved at the local level politically. And so I feel that I had that example, so I knew that I needed to be involved locally. And he had no intention of ever running for office, and as he would say, he doesn't like bureaucracy. I've encouraged him many times, but he's not interested. So I knew that. So I had gone door to door with my dad, and then at the college level, I probably would have been involved more. In high school, I was involved in student senate and things like that, and state student council, and then in the college level, I wasn't. But I do remember our former governor, and he served as a year as agriculture secretary too, Ed Schaefer, who remains a very good friend to me and mentor. I really look up to him in many ways. I told him once as a young girl that I wanted to be the governor of North Dakota. And I remember him telling me, well, you better get started now. And even as a college student, or times that I've seen him through the years, he would say, what are you up to? What are you doing? And so I just believe that you need to serve at the local level, which includes your legislative district. And I did work in state government for a short amount of time, And I remember our lieutenant governor telling me, you need to pay your dues and show up to your local district meetings. And so I do. I pay my political dues, and to me it doesn't matter what party you're paying dues for, but I'm not a big party person. I'm a people person. But what I've learned is decisions are made in that local level district, and I need to pay my dues. So when I started going to district meetings, I was 20 to 30 years younger than everybody else. And then when I started bringing my husband, he was very annoyed by that. And I said, come on, like I need another young person there. But you have to show up. Mm-hmm. It starts with showing up and not just ranting and raving on Twitter or wherever you're interacting, but making sure that you're building relationships at that local level. And so that can start at your legislative district level, in your university opportunities, but we need a next generation involved. And I don't think that you start at the top. I think you start at the grassroots level.
Well, that's a very good question, because we've seen, I wouldn't say a trend, but we have seen candidates who just kind of just run straight for Senate or run straight for Congress. And my husband always has a saying, well, why can't they just run for dog catcher first? How come they haven't served at the local level? What have they done? How about school board? How about, city planner or comptroller? It depends on whether they're elected positions, depending on your state. But these are all great ways to get involved.
Right. I'm not against, I use my husband as an example a lot. He's a wonderful volunteer and serves on many boards as well. However, he will always tell you, I don't have time to run for an elected position, Katie. I'm a small business owner. Right. And I always said, you should run someday. You would be so good because of that business experience, even though he hasn't been elected. He runs a small business, and he's changed the face of a small business and grown it with his past corporate sales experience. And I can see him being a person that just jumps into it because of the time issue.
Right.
I don't think he actually ever will. If he's watching right now, he's rolling his eyes. But I see why people don't.
Right.
But at the same time, I see the great need at all local levels.
And people with those skills, especially someone with a business background.
Right.
I mean, local government is all about budgets and money.
So much budget.
Right? So that's a very good question. How to get involved at that local level.
But being willing to serve, it starts with being willing to serve. And also tapping somebody on the shoulder and encouraging someone else to run. It's not all about you, it's also encouraging others because we need a wider swath.
Yeah, and we need that next generation.
Yeah, of all, I mean, not just your generation, but my generation. I mean, we need more people.
In general,
and more choices. I mean, I just saw a nearby small town that had a couple of city school board positions open. I want to say they had 2 positions open, and they had 8 people running. Okay, that's great. Oftentimes, we have a school board position that runs unopposed. That's just, no one will step up and run. And so that's important that you have choices, and you have to be willing to lose, too.
Right.
You can be all in, and you might lose.
Any more? Well, thank you everyone for coming out. It's really wonderful to see you all. I'm going to preview for next week. Next Tuesday, same time, same bat channel. We've got Patrick Jepson and his wife, Mary Jo Jacoby. Patrick was the social secretary and spokesman for Princess Diana for 8 years. And his wife, Mary Jo, worked for President Reagan as well as George H.W. Bush. And they both have a background in corporate reputation management, and they talk about things like how Delta Airlines, probably not a good idea for them to drag the doctor off the plane. They talk about women's leadership. So it's going to be a very engaging presentation with lots of interesting stories. And who doesn't want to hear about the royals, right?
So you go from rural North Dakota to the Royals.
So thank you all again for being here this afternoon. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie.